Welcome back to Bargirl Baddies. Today's story is going to challenge some assumptions you might have about relationships, about what makes a good partner, and about why so many Western men find themselves in Thailand searching for something they couldn't find back home. This is the confession of Marcus Chen, a 29-year-old software engineer from Vancouver, Canada. Marcus grew up in a world where success was measured in degrees and salary brackets, where the right partner was supposed to check boxes on a list his parents helped write before he even hit puberty. He dated the women he was supposed to date. Educated, ambitious, driven. On paper, they were perfect. But after years of feeling like he was failing an exam he didn't know he'd signed up for, Marcus found himself sitting in a bar in Bangkok questioning everything he'd been taught about love, compatibility, and what actually makes someone worth building a life with. He thought he'd found an answer in Thailand. He thought he'd discovered that educated Western women had been the problem all along. But what he learned was far more complicated, far more painful, and far more honest than the simple narrative he'd been telling himself. Before we get into Marcus's story, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. Have you ever felt like dating in your home country was just exhausting? Like you were always being evaluated instead of appreciated? Share your experiences below, and if this story resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe, because we've got plenty more cautionary tales coming your way. Alright, so let me start by saying I'm not proud of how this story ends, but I think it needs to be told, because I know I'm not the only guy who's felt this way. My name is Marcus. I'm 29, originally from Vancouver, and I work in tech. Well, I used to work in tech there. Now I'm back, starting over, but we'll get to that. Growing up, my parents were classic Asian immigrant success story types. They came to Canada with nothing, worked brutal hours, sacrificed everything so my sister and I could have opportunities they never had. Education was religion in our house. Anything less than an A was a failure. Anything less than a professional career was wasting potential. And when it came to relationships, the message was clear, even if they never said it directly. Date someone smart. Date someone accomplished. Date someone who comes from a good family. Someone your grandmother won't be ashamed to introduce at church. So that's what I did. I went to UBC, got my computer science degree, landed a job at a decent software company in downtown Vancouver, and started dating the kind of women my parents would approve of. Sarah was a dental hygienist. Rachel worked in marketing at a tech startup. Jennifer was a corporate lawyer. They were all intelligent, attractive, ambitious. They had their lives together. They knew what they wanted. And every single relationship left me feeling like I was somehow not enough. I remember this one dinner with Jennifer about a year before I left for Thailand. We'd been dating for 8 months, and things were getting serious, or at least I thought they were. We went to this trendy place on Main Street. One of those restaurants where the portions are tiny and the prices are obscene, but you go anyway because it signals you've made it. She spent the first 20 minutes talking about a case she was working on, barely looking up from her phone. When the food came, she asked me about my 5-year plan. Not like, hey babe, what do you see for us? More like a performance review. Where did I see my career going? Was I planning to move into management or stay technical? Had I thought about getting my MBA? Did I have investment properties in mind? I told her I was pretty happy where I was. I made good money. I liked my team. I had hobbies and friends and a life outside work. She put down her fork and looked at me like I just told her I was dropping out to join a cult. She said, Marcus, you're almost 30. Happy isn't a strategy. You need ambition. You need to be building something. That was the thing with all of them. Looking back, love felt conditional on achievement. Affection felt like a reward for meeting benchmarks. I'd come home after a long day and want to just decompress, watch something stupid on Netflix, order pizza. But there was always this undercurrent of judgment. Shouldn't you be working on that side project? Shouldn't you be networking? Why are you wasting time when you could be optimizing? Jennifer broke up with me 3 weeks after that dinner. She said I lacked drive. She said she needed a partner who matched her energy, her ambition. She said it kindly, like she was doing me a favor, letting me go so I could find someone more on my level. I nodded, said I understood, and went home to my empty apartment feeling like I'd just been fired from a job I didn't even want. That's when I booked the ticket to Bangkok. 2 weeks. Just a reset. A break from the grind, from the cold Vancouver rain, from the weight of constantly feeling evaluated. My buddy Dave had gone the year before and said it changed his life. Cheap, beautiful, easy. I wasn't looking for anything serious. I just wanted to not think for a while. I landed at Suvarnabhumi Airport on a Tuesday night in March. The heat hit me the second I walked out of the terminal. Thick, wet, alive. It smelled like exhaust and street food and something floral I couldn't identify. I took a taxi to my hotel in Sukhumvit, watched the city blur past the window. Neon signs in Thai script, motorbikes weaving through traffic, street vendors grilling meat on makeshift carts. It felt chaotic and vibrant in a way Vancouver never did. The first few days, I did the tourist thing. Grand Palace, Floating Market, Khao San Road. I ate pad thai from street stalls, drank cheap Singa beer, wandered temples in the crushing afternoon heat. It was nice, distracting, but I was still in my head. Still replaying Jennifer's words. Still feeling like I'd somehow failed at something I didn't even know how to succeed at. On my third night, I went to a bar in Sukhumvit Soi 11. Not a girly bar, just a regular spot with live music and cocktails. I sat at the bar nursing a whiskey sour, watching the band cover mediocre versions of Western pop songs. That's when she sat down next to me. Her name was Ploy. She was 26, Thai, with this easy smile that made you feel like you'd known her for years. She worked there, I'd later learn, but not in the way you're probably thinking. She was a cocktail waitress, not a bar girl. At least that's what I told myself at the time. She spoke decent English, better than my non-existent Thai. She asked where I was from, what brought me to Bangkok, the usual stuff. But the way she asked felt different, like she actually cared about the answer. We talked for 2 hours. She told me about growing up in Isan, about moving to Bangkok when she was 19 to find work, about how her family still lived in a village up north and depended on the money she sent home every month. She asked about my job, but not in that interrogating way Jennifer used to. She seemed genuinely curious, laughing when I tried to explain what a software engineer actually does. You sit at computer all day? That sounds boring. Why you not do something more fun? It was such a simple question, but it hit me hard. Why didn't I do something more fun? Because I'd been told my whole life that fun was frivolous, that success meant sacrifice, that happiness was what you got after you achieved enough. Ploy didn't care about any of that. She cared that I seemed sad, that I was alone, that I'd travelled halfway across the world to drink by myself in a bar. When her shift ended, she asked if I wanted to get food. We walked to a late-night noodle spot down a side street, sat on plastic stools under fluorescent lights, ate boat noodles that cost maybe 40 baht. She taught me how to use chopsticks properly, laughed when I fumbled, touched my arm when she talked. There was no pretense, no performance, just presence. I extended my trip after that first week, then I extended it again. I saw Ploy almost every day. She'd finish work and we'd explore the city together, night markets in Chatuchak, rooftop bars in Siloam, temples at dawn before the tourists arrived. She showed me her Bangkok, not the one in guidebooks. We'd ride on the back of motorbike taxis, her arms wrapped around my waist, laughing as we weaved through traffic. We'd sit by the Chao Phraya River, eating grilled fish and sticky rice, watching the sun set over Wat Arun. It felt effortless in a way nothing ever had before. She didn't quiz me about my future, or judge me for sleeping in, or make me feel guilty for wanting to just exist without optimizing. When I told her about Jennifer, about feeling like I was never enough, she looked at me with this mix of confusion and sympathy. Why you want to be with someone who make you feel bad? That, not love. Love supposed to make you feel good. It seemed so obvious when she said it. Why had I been chasing relationships that felt like work? Why had I accepted that love was supposed to be hard, conditional, earned through achievement? With Ploy, I felt appreciated for just being myself. She liked that I was kind, that I listened, that I made her laugh. She didn't care about my 5-year plan. There were small things, looking back, that should have given me pause. Her stories about her family sometimes shifted in the details. She'd mention a brother one day, then later reference 2 brothers, like it had always been that way. She'd disappear sometimes for a full day, not responding to messages, then reappear with vague explanations about family obligations or phone problems. When I asked about her past, about previous relationships, she'd get quiet, change the subject, say she didn't like thinking about sad things. I told myself it was cultural differences. I told myself I was being paranoid, projecting Western expectations onto a different context. I told myself that not everyone processes or shares information the same way, and that was okay. She made me happy. That's what mattered. By week 6, I'd fallen in love. Not the anxious, performance-based love I'd known before. Something else. Something that felt like relief. Like I'd finally found a place where I could breathe. I remember sitting on her balcony in her small apartment in On Nut, drinking Leo beer, watching the Bangkok skyline glow in the distance. She was inside cooking somtam, singing along to Thai pop music playing from her phone. And I thought, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. Not ambition, not achievement, just simple, uncomplicated human connection. I didn't want to go back to Vancouver, back to the rain and the performance reviews disguised as relationships and the crushing weight of never being enough. So I started researching visa options, job opportunities, cost of living. Ploy seemed happy when I told her I was thinking about staying longer. She didn't push, didn't demand, just smiled and said she'd like that. That I made her happy too. Looking back now, I can see how I was building a fantasy, how I was using Ploy and Thailand as an escape hatch from problems I hadn't actually addressed, how I'd swung from one extreme to another, from educated Western women are the only valid partners, to Thai bar girls are pure and uncomplicated angels. Both were projections. Both were unfair. Both were destined to collapse under the weight of reality. But in that moment, sitting on that balcony, drinking that beer, listening to her sing in a language I didn't understand, I felt more at peace than I had in years. I felt like I'd finally figured something out that everyone else was too busy achieving to notice. That simplicity was underrated. That presence mattered more than credentials. That love didn't have to be a negotiation. I flew back to Vancouver 2 days later to handle logistics, to quit my job, sublet my apartment, pack my life into storage. My parents were horrified. My friends thought I'd lost my mind. Dave, the one who'd recommended Thailand in the first place, pulled me aside at a goodbye dinner and said, "Bro, it's supposed to be a vacation, not a lifestyle. You can't just run away from your problems." But I wasn't running away. I was running toward something. Toward a version of myself that felt authentic instead of performed. Toward a relationship that felt real instead of transactional. Toward a life that prioritized happiness over optimization. At least that's what I told myself as I boarded the plane back to Bangkok 3 months later. A 1-year education visa in my passport. And enough savings to live comfortably while I figured out my next move. Ploy picked me up from the airport. She wore a yellow dress and smiled so wide I forgot every doubt I'd had. We went back to her apartment, ordered delivery, fell asleep tangled together under the ceiling fan. For the first month, it felt like I'd made the right choice. Like I'd cracked the code everyone else was too afraid to try. But comfort has a way of breeding complacency. And complacency has a way of revealing things you were too distracted to notice before. Things that were there all along, waiting patiently in the shadows, ready to teach you that geography doesn't solve internal problems. That running towards something, without understanding what you're running from, just means you bring all your baggage with you, unpacked and unexamined, to a place that won't be nearly as forgiving as you hoped. The first month back in Bangkok felt like vindication. I'd wake up next to Ploy in her small apartment, sunlight streaming through the curtains, the sound of motorbikes and street vendors already filling the air outside. She'd make Thai iced coffee, too sweet, but I learned to love it, and we'd plan our day with the kind of spontaneity I'd never allowed myself in Vancouver. Maybe we'd take the BTS to Chatuchak Market. Maybe we'd just stay in bed and watch Thai dramas I didn't understand, but laughed at anyway because her reactions were entertaining enough. There was no schedule, no pressure, no performance review coming at the end of the quarter. I enrolled in Thai language classes at a school near Asok to justify my education visa. Went 3 times a week, learned tones and script and basic phrases that Ploy found adorable when I mispronounced. She'd correct me gently, her hand on my arm, repeating the word slowly until I got it almost right. My classmates were the usual mix of expats and long-term tourists, retirees, English teachers, guys like me who'd found reasons to stay that had nothing to do with education. We'd grab beers after class sometimes, swap stories, complain about the heat and the traffic in that performative way foreigners do when they want you to know they're not just tourists anymore. Ploy introduced me to her friends. Other girls who worked in bars and restaurants around Sukhumvit, some with foreign boyfriends, some without. We'd all meet up for dinners and drinks, and I felt like I'd found a community. Like I belonged somewhere for the first time since leaving Canada. Her friends were warm and welcoming, asking about my life back home, teasing Ploy about finally finding a good Farang who wasn't old and fat. I laughed along, felt included, felt chosen. But somewhere around month 2, things started shifting in ways I didn't want to acknowledge. Small things at first. Ploy stopped working as many shifts at the cocktail lounge. She said her boss cut her hours, that business was slow, that it was fine because now we had more time together. I didn't question it. More time together sounded good. But then money started coming up more frequently in conversation. Her rent was due and she was short. Her mother needed medicine for diabetes. Her younger brother's school fees were higher than expected. Every time, she'd frame it apologetically, almost embarrassed, like she hated asking but had no choice. And every time, I'd help. 1,000 baht here, 2,000 there. It didn't seem like much. The exchange rate was favourable and I had savings. I was living cheaply by Vancouver standards. What was $50 to help someone I loved? What kind of partner would I be if I said no when she was struggling? She'd thank me with tears in her eyes, promised to pay me back when things got better, make me feel like a hero instead of what I actually was, which was a wallet with emotions attached. The drinking increased too. I'd never been much of a drinker in Vancouver. A beer or two with dinner, maybe cocktails if it was someone's birthday, but in Bangkok, drinking was just what you did. It was social, it was cheap. It was how you filled the long afternoons when you had no job and no structure and no purpose beyond maintaining the fantasy you'd constructed. Ploy and I would start with beers at lunch, switch to whiskey by evening, stumble home after midnight and do it again the next day. She could handle it better than me. I'd wake up foggy and guilty, promising myself I'd slow down, then find myself 3 drinks deep by noon because what else was there to do? My friends back home stopped calling as much. The time difference was part of it, but mostly it was because I had nothing to say that didn't sound like I was either bragging or deflecting. Yeah, life's great here, just living the dream, you know. They'd ask about work and I'd change the subject. They'd ask about ploy and I'd get defensive. They didn't understand. They were stuck in the grind, stuck in the performance, stuck in relationships that felt like corporate mergers. I'd found something real. Except it wasn't real, was it? It was a transaction I'd dressed up as romance because the alternative was admitting I'd quit my job and moved across the world for a fantasy. Ploy never asked me directly for money. She was smarter than that. She'd just mention problems, let me offer solutions, thank me profusely, make me feel needed and generous and important. And I'd convince myself this was what partnership looked like, supporting each other, being there when things got hard. By month 4, I'd given her close to $15,000. Rent, medical bills, family emergencies, visa issues for a trip she wanted to take to visit her grandmother who was sick. I started to notice she had nice things I hadn't seen before. A new phone. Designer sunglasses. She said they were gifts from friends, from her cousin who visited from Singapore. I wanted to believe her because the alternative meant confronting things I wasn't ready to confront. I tried to have a conversation about money once. Suggested maybe we should budget better, plan ahead, think about the future. She went quiet. That scary kind of quiet where you know you've stepped on a landmine but it hasn't detonated yet. Then she started crying. Said I was changing. That when I first came to Thailand, I was kind and generous and happy, but now I was becoming like all the other Farangs who come here and think every Thai woman is trying to scam them. That she thought I was different, but maybe she was wrong. That maybe she should just go back to Isan and leave me alone since I obviously didn't trust her anymore. I apologised. Of course I apologised. I held her while she cried and told her I was sorry, that I was just stressed, that I didn't mean it that way. I gave her another 2,000 baht for her brother's tuition, and she smiled through tears and said she loved me, and I felt like I'd passed some kind of test I didn't understand the rules of. The collapse started with a message from my buddy Dave. He was coming through Bangkok for work, wanted to meet up for drinks, catch up. I was excited. It had been months since I'd seen anyone from my old life. We met at a bar in Nana, one of those places that's technically a sports bar, but everyone knows what it really is. Girls in tight dresses circulating, offering company for the price of lady drinks. Dave showed up late, apologetic, jet-lagged. We ordered beers and started catching up. He asked about ploy, about how things were going. I gave him the sanitized version. Great, really happy, thinking about staying long-term. He got this weird look on his face, this uncomfortable hesitation. Then he said, "Marcus, I need to tell you something, and you're probably going to be pissed at me. I saw Proy last year when I came through Bangkok. She was working at a bar in Soy Cowboy. I didn't realize it was the same girl until you posted that photo on Instagram last month. I laughed, told him he was mistaken. Ploy worked at a cocktail lounge, not a bar. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through old photos, showed me a picture from a year ago. Ploy in a red dress with a number pinned to it, sitting on some guy's lap, smiling for the camera. She looked younger, her hair was different, but it was definitely her. My stomach dropped. I made excuses. Maybe she used to work there before I met her. Maybe it was a different girl who looked similar. Dave shook his head. She told me her name was Noy, not Ploy. Said she had a daughter in Iran she was supporting. I bought her drinks. We talked for like an hour. Nothing happened. I was with a group. But, yeah man, I'm pretty sure that's her. I went home that night and didn't say anything to Ploy. She was already asleep, or pretending to be. I lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to make the pieces fit in a way that didn't destroy everything. Maybe she had worked in a bar before. Lots of girls did. That didn't mean she was lying now. Maybe she used a different name for work. That was normal, wasn't it? Self-protection. Maybe Dave was wrong. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was letting paranoia poison something good, because I was so conditioned to expect relationships to fail. But the doubt was there now, awake and hungry. I started noticing things I'd overlooked before. How she'd sometimes come home late, smelling like cigarette smoke and cheap perfume, claiming she'd been out with friends. How her phone was always face down, always locked, always out of reach. How she'd get defensive when I asked simple questions about her day. How the money I gave her never seemed to solve any problems, just created new ones that required more money to fix. I did something I'm not proud of. I went through her phone while she was in the shower. I know. Violation of privacy, trust, all of that. But I had to know. And what I found confirmed everything I've been trying not to see. Messages with multiple men. Farangs with names like Mike and Hans and Robert. Conversations in broken English about meeting up, about money, about how much she missed them and when were they coming back to Thailand. Photos she'd sent them. The same photos she'd sent me early on, the ones I thought were just for me. Calendar entries for dates that overlapped with times she'd told me she was visiting family or working late. And then I found the messages with someone named Klaus, a German guy who'd been sending her money every month for the past year, who called her his girlfriend, who was planning to come visit in 2 weeks and expected her to be available, be exclusive, waiting. She got out of the shower and found me sitting on the bed with her phone in my hand. She didn't even try to deny it. Just wrapped her towel tighter and said, "You go through my phone. That's private." I asked her about Klaus, about Mike and Hans and Robert, about whether anything she told me was true. She sat down next to me, didn't cry this time, just looked tired, said, "What you think this is? You think I can live on what cocktail lounge pay? You think my family can eat on that? You nice guy Marcus, I like you, but this is how life is for Thai girl like me. We do what we have to do." I asked if she loved me. She shrugged. Said, "I love that you kind. I love that you take care me. But love, like in movies. That for rich people who don't have to worry about money. I have to worry about money every day. You knew what I was when you met me. You just wanted to believe something different. And the worst part was, she was right. I had known, on some level. The signs were all there. I'd just chosen to ignore them because acknowledging the truth meant admitting I'd been running from myself instead of toward anything real. That I'd used her as much as she'd used me. That I'd needed to believe the fantasy of the warm, uncomplicated Thai girl who loved me for me, because the alternative was confronting why educated Western women had been exhausting. Not because they were cold or demanding, but because they required me to show up as a whole person, instead of a wallet, or a savior, or an escape plan. I moved out that night. Checked into a cheap hotel in Ekamai. Spent 3 days in a fog of anger and humiliation and grief. Not just for Ploy, but for the entire delusion. I'd burned through almost $40,000 in 8 months. I'd quit a good job, alienated my family, abandoned my life, all for a relationship that was never what I needed it to be. Klaus arrived the following week. I know because Ploy posted photos on Facebook. Her and some older white guy at a nice restaurant at the beach in Pattaya, smiling like she'd smiled with me. The caption was in Thai, but Google translated it to something like, "So happy with my love." I blocked her after that, not out of anger, just exhaustion. There was nothing left to say. I stayed in Thailand for another 2 months trying to figure out what to do next. I thought about staying, finding a real job, building an actual life instead of a fantasy. But everywhere I went, I saw myself. Middle-aged Farangs with young Thai girlfriends telling themselves the same stories I'd told myself. That this was different. That their girl was different. That love transcends economics and culture and power imbalances if you just believe hard enough. Maybe some of them were right. Maybe some of those relationships were genuine. But I couldn't tell anymore. The filter was broken. I flew back to Vancouver in November. My parents didn't say I told you so, which somehow made it worse. My sister helped me find a sublet, lent me money to get back on my feet. I found a new job, not as good as the old one, but it paid the bills. I started seeing a therapist, which felt very Western and self-indulgent, but also necessary. We talked about patterns, about how I'd been seeking external validation my whole life, from my parents through achievement, from women through being chosen, from ploy through being needed. How I'd never learned to validate myself, to know my own worth independent of who approved of me. The therapist asked what I learned from Thailand. I said I learned that educated Western women aren't cold corporate robots and Thai bar girls aren't angels who love unconditionally. That both were fantasies I'd created to avoid looking at my own shit. That geography doesn't fix internal problems. That running toward something is just running away with better marketing. She asked if I regretted it. I thought about that for a long time. $40,000 and a year of my life for a lesson I could have learned in therapy for a fraction of the cost. But would I have learned it? Would I have believed it if someone just told me, instead of letting me live it? I don't regret Ploy entirely. She was surviving the only way she knew how in a system that gave her limited options. I was looking for an escape from expectations I didn't know how to challenge. We used each other. It wasn't evil. It was just human. Messy and transactional and sad in the way most things are when you look at them honestly. I'm dating again now. Slowly. Carefully. Women in Vancouver who have careers and ambitions and opinions. I don't see those things as threats anymore. Don't interpret challenge as rejection. Don't confuse comfort with compatibility or difficulty with incompatibility. Real connection requires showing up honestly, vulnerably, without needing the other person to fix or validate or complete you. It's harder than fantasy, but it's also real in a way nothing in Thailand ever was. Sometimes I think about Ploy. Wonder if she's still with Klaus, or if she's moved on to someone else. Wonder if she ever thinks about me, or if I was just another Farang who passed through, indistinguishable from the others. I hope she's okay. I hope she finds a way out of the cycle if that's what she wants. But that's not my story to write anymore. This is what I want to say to anyone thinking about doing what I did. If you're exhausted by dating in your home country, if you feel like everyone's too demanding or too cold or too focused on the wrong things, the problem might not be them. It might be you. It might be that you haven't figured out what you actually want versus what you think you're supposed to want. And running to Thailand or the Philippines or Colombia or anywhere else won't solve that. It'll just give you new problems that feel temporarily easier because they're unfamiliar. Real love, wherever you find it, requires honesty. With yourself first, then with the other person. It requires seeing people as they are, not as you need them to be. And it requires being someone worth loving. Not because of what you provide or achieve, but because you've done the work to know yourself, to like yourself, to show up as whole instead of half. I didn't know any of that when I booked that first ticket to Bangkok. I thought I was looking for love. Turns out I was looking for permission to stop performing. The cost of that lesson was steep, but at least now I know. And knowing, however painful, is better than the alternative. Better than spending your whole life running from problems dressed up as solutions, from yourself dressed up as someone else, in a country that will always be more complicated than the fantasy you needed it to be. So there you have it. Marcus's story. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, that wouldn't happen to me. My situation is different. My girl is different. I get it. I thought the same thing. We all do. That's how the story starts. The question is whether you're willing to look honestly at how it ends before you've invested everything you have in finding out the hard way. The truth about dating educated Western women versus Thai bar girls isn't that one is better than the other. It's that both are human beings with their own needs, survival strategies, and complications. And you can't build something real with either until you stop treating them like solutions to problems you haven't named, like characters in a story you're writing to avoid the one you're actually living. That's the lesson. That's what $40,000 bought me. And if this story saved even one person from learning it the same way I did, then maybe it was worth it. Maybe confession is cheaper than repetition. Maybe honesty, however late, is better than silence. I'm back in Vancouver now, starting over, doing the work. It's not a Hollywood ending, but it's real. And after everything, real is what I've been looking for all along.